Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. My dad will be so grateful. See you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.
Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast, a show about crafting a life you love and making work optional, using the tools of mindfulness, envisioning, and financial independence. I'm your host, Adam Cuello, and I'm so glad you're here. Mindfulness helps you develop self-awareness to know yourself better and what's most important to you by practicing a kind, curious awareness. Envisioning is all about choosing to think big about your life and putting the power of your predicting brain to work to create the life you dream of. And financial independence brings awareness and choice to your financial life, empowering you to make your vision a reality by getting your money sorted out and ultimately making work optional. And here's the best part. You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to live out your vision. Mindful Fire is about using these tools to craft that life now on the path to financial independence and beyond. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning exercise. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Let's jump into today's episode. Haley, welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you, Adam. I'm excited to be here as well.
Yeah, I know it's been a long time coming. I first heard you speak to my team at Google. I think it was at the start of the year or end of last year. And I said, we have to get you on the podcast. And I had to reschedule for some reason. But here we are. We made it. And I'm thrilled to have you here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it for a long time. So I think we'll have a good conversation.
I'd love to have you start by sharing with the audience a little bit about who you are, your journey, and what you're up to in the world.
So I am the owner of the Sparkling Hippie, LLC. That's my business. It's evolved over the years, but essentially I am a business coach. I specialize in helping wellness-based businesses launch and grow their businesses. But I have worked with all different types of industries. I started that in 2018, and it's been a journey. So I'm 5-6 years in. And then the last probably 3 years, I've gotten into corporate wellness events, similar to what we did at Google for your team. That is hosting some really fun, interesting classes that combine abstract art techniques, as well as journaling, a little bit of yoga, and bringing that into personal development. That's my two things that I'm into right now.
Very cool. So you've been doing this for about 5 years, 6 years now. How did you make the leap to starting your own business? What were you doing before? And how did you decide now's the time I'm going to go all in on this business?
My life's been a pretty wild ride in a good way. So when I was in college back in 2012, 2013, I was 19, 20 years old. And I felt very strongly in my bones that I didn't know the words. I didn't know the word entrepreneur. The internet was around, but people making money on the internet was this relatively new concept. I don't know if anyone knows Pioneer Woman. That was the only person in my life that I had heard of that was blogging and making money doing it. I was actually studying public relations and was doing quite well. But I felt in my bones that I was like, I don't think I'm going to do PR. I just don't. I feel like I would go to my PR classes. I was head of the PR society, make all A's, all this stuff. And then I would rush home so I could blog. And so I could work on my blog. So I could redesign my logo 12 times. And I was just really into this piece about somehow helping people through the internet. And I had no idea what that looked like. And I remember talking to my friends at the time, and we were like, yeah, there's something out there, but what is it? Which is crazy 10 years later, because look at us. Zooming, right? So I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to write and use the internet. essentially. So I quit college. That's my first big leap to do this. Long story short, I went back, finished up. I had a semester left when I quit. So you can imagine how terrified my parents were.
Oh, that's pretty far along to say, you
I had
know
one
what?
semester
I'm
left.
done.
Yes. And I was, like I said, had top of the class, all this stuff, but I just knew it wasn't what I wanted. So anyway, I go back and finish. I took a job in PR. The whole time I'm like still blogging, still trying to figure this out, starting to take what little online classes we had at the time for how to make money online. Still a new concept. So a couple years go by and I'm like, I know I need to do this. I know this is where I'm supposed to live my life. Like purpose is the word I use. So I quit my job and moved to Australia. And naturally, right? Just a very logical decision there. Thinking my idea was that, oh, I'll have a lot less expenses living abroad, living out of a backpack, and I'll have all this free time to make this business thing work. So I had a great time. I blogged the whole time, didn't make $1 from it. Learned a lot. Come back home to Oklahoma, take another PR job. And this time I'm like, okay, I know that I want to do this blog thing. And that's the only word I knew how to use at the time. I was starting digital nomads. Those terminologies were starting to come into play, entrepreneurship. I knew that's what I wanted, but it still felt like, how do I get there? I'm doing the things, but how do I make it profitable to where I can actually do this full time? So while I was at the last PR job, I invested heavily in my financial mindset, which I know you'll probably like to talk about. Just financial stories that I was telling myself, oh, you can't make money doing this, or you have to work hard, or all of these things. I started looking into all of that. I got twice certified as a life coach, and I saw that as a revenue stream. And then I just heavily invested financially, energetically, mentally, all of it in how do I actually build a business? How do I actually make money from it? Because I had all the PR stuff. I knew how to getting on camera was no big deal. Writing, all of that was great. But how do I turn it into a profitable business? So 2 years of that. And then another natural leap. I quit my job to move to New Zealand for a year.
Did Australia, and I got to do New Zealand. Okay.
Yeah. Which worked out because at that point, so this is now 2019, I had actually built a business. I had offerings. I had a business entity established. I had my name. So when I left my job in 2019, I was actually prepared to grow it. It wasn't me just blogging about whatever. 2019 and 2020 were very hard. So I'm now a business coach, and I strongly advise my clients not to quit their job and go do what I did. It was great, but it takes most businesses at least 5 years to be profitable. That's the average. And I knew that, but no one could tell me anything. But I was very willing for the first 2 years of my business. I lived on very little. I went without everything I owned, all my credit. I was willing to invest all my credit cards into the business, drop my credit score, knowing that it was ultimately a financially wise decision, because ultimately there's good debt and bad debt, right? And I knew this was going to be good debt. But that doesn't mean it wasn't really hard. So finally, when COVID hit, that kind of brought actually a lot of business to me, because people realized online business was a thing. All of a sudden, people found out about Zoom. People found out about, oh, you can be my coach in California when I'm living in Germany or whatever. So that worked out. But talking about the 5-year thing, I'm really at the 5-year mark now. And I feel like I'm just now getting to that, a little bit of stability. I can spend a little more. I can start looking at getting a new car or something like that. I share this because I feel like there is a huge misinformation out there that I know I was fully believing. I'm going to quit my job, and within 6 months, I'll be a millionaire. And I had the mindset for it. I had the gumption for it, but it just doesn't typically work that way.
Yeah.
I feel like people need to know. I feel like it's important to know the truth.
Yeah. I think it is important to share that part of your story, and the fact that most people starting a business aren't, especially if they haven't done it before, they're not just going to jump in and be having a profitable business producing a ton of cash flow. You see these people online, everyone's marketing, just take my course, and next thing you're going to be making 6 figures or 7 figures or 8 figures. They're all about the figures. And it's that's probably not going to happen for most people. And I've been dabbling in entrepreneurship for most of my life in various ways, from lemonade stands to like trying to start a SaaS business and pursuing one of those programs where it's in 6 months, you're going to have a SaaS business and the rat race is going to be behind you. It's maybe not people listening to this probably have heard my story about envisioning myself out of a job at Google, but we don't need to go into that now. But I think it's really important to realize you got to figure it out. And my big realization is now as I try to turn this podcast into a business and start creating offers to support people who are pursuing financial independence, nearing financial independence, and trying to figure out what they're doing next, I'm being faced with not only what do I do in the business, but like my own self-doubt. I'm sure you come across a lot of that with your clients.
Yeah.
There's just so much like emotional and self-awareness that you need to develop as you pursue these things that you're trying to create something from nothing.
100%. 100%. I think probably these people who are selling 6 months to 6 figures, I think they're well-meaning of the reality that I see with myself, my friends, my clients, is it's a journey, just like you're saying. I feel like probably I was really well ahead of my peers when I started my business because I had all this marketing, PR, communications background. Like I whipped out newsletters, all of that. But that doesn't mean I believed in myself. That doesn't mean that I felt comfortable being really vulnerable. It depends on the type of business you're starting. I think there's so many things. I think there's the mental know-how, but I also think you have to be, like you're saying, emotionally and mentally confident. And I also think there's an element of purpose. If it's not your purpose, it's not going to work. I see a lot of new entrepreneurs go with, oh, maybe I'll do this because it makes money. I had a time where I was like, oh, I'll just do PR freelance because that'll make money quick. If your heart's not in it, it's not going to work because any type of business, whether you're good at it, whether it seems easy, you have to be 200% gung-ho committed from the inside out. Don't even try if you don't feel that way about the work that you're trying to turn into a business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when times get tough, you're not going to have that purpose to pull you forward over the difficult time into the next challenge. You're going to give up because it's going to be like, that didn't work. And all the self-doubt and all those things are going to come into play. And you're not going to have that like burning desire to keep you going.
Yes. Yeah. And the going will get tough.
It will, for sure.
It is hard.
It's very hard. Yeah, especially if you're doing it by yourself. Tell me a little bit about how the business evolved as you identified business coaching as a viable plan.
So when I first started, I was doing creative coaching. And my whole idea was I'm an artist, I paint. And I was seeing all these creative people in my life who'd made amazing works of art, way better than what I was making even, but they lacked a confidence in themselves. And I was watching and I was like, the only thing keeping them from being a full-time artist or successful artist is their mentality. So I did that for a while, which was interesting, but ultimately it just wasn't quite aligned. So like I said, I tried doing the PR thing and I was like, it's not really my passion. I know that. And then naturally, people started coming to me for wanting to publish their books, wanting to launch their businesses. I think they just saw that I had the marketing and PR background and I had invested so much in myself that I could speak to how to start a business. So it just happened and I loved it. So I shifted gears. But all the while, started doing the business coaching, but all the while, it felt very separate. Okay, here's marketing, business coaching, but there's this piece in me that's doing this intuitive art and having a blast and like wanting to somehow help people creatively. And it was coming into mixing together, but I couldn't figure it out. I think our ego likes to keep things in boxes and keep them separate. And the more personal development work I did and let go of that ego, the more I just saw these two things coming together. And they're still slowly coming together. But ultimately what happened is I thought, okay, so I love doing abstract art. And I love it because that's where I free my mind. That's where I practice trusting outside of myself. That's where I practice letting go. I love it because there's no rules. For a while, I did pretty pictures where the horse is brown and the sky is blue. And it was exhausting because I was like, no, I live that world all day long. I want to go somewhere where I can just throw paint around. It has no meaning. And it just feels good to do it. And so I started seeing in my business coaching clients, they didn't have that. They needed that release, that like ability to trust, letting their business evolve, like trust all of these things that come up in business. And so I thought, I'm going to try it. So I created a workshop where I just chose a couple of abstract art techniques. Like literally, we're talking scribbling, maybe even just looking at a picture upside down, things like that. I had about 10 friends join me, and that allowed them to step into the intuitive, creative part of their brain that they weren't really using that often. They loved it, had great feedback. And so I was like, this feels right. This feels exciting to me. It really brings two pieces of what I'm passionate about together, the personal development, the ambition with the creativity and the intuition. I just started putting it out there. Hey, I'm doing these. I'd love to do them for your team. From there, I literally went to my downtown I was in Sonora, California at the time. I just passed out flyers. I'm doing this. I want to do it for your team. I want to do it for your friends, whatever. And yeah, I landed the Google gig. I've since presented to some really awesome corporate teams like Microsoft, Pinterest. And it's just because I'm putting myself out there and asking for it. And also that piece I mentioned earlier about it being in alignment with who I am and what I'm here to do.
Right. Back to the purpose piece, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So how would you summarize your purpose?
That's a great question. I feel like I'm here to help people become who they're born to be. And that's the vague way of saying it. But I really believe, whether it's through the art workshops or the business coaching, people come to me and they know what they want to do, but they have so many fears, so many blocks about doing it. And I'm allowing them an outlet or an option to go for it, to just try it. Just what if you chose a different story and tried it a different way? Yeah. And if you want a more specific answer, would be helping people find themselves with art and journaling.
Nice. I love it. I really love how you identify that need for yourself, that need to have that creative outlet where there are no rules. And yeah, I think for me, it's needed, right? I don't know exactly how much of that I have. I think I have a little bit and more than most because I'm all like about envisioning and brainstorming and just like letting my mind run wild, basically, and journaling and things like seeing the connections between things that don't seem like they would be connected. But I can see the value in having a space or a practice where you're just painting and you're just trusting. I've had times where I don't know if I was drawing or what I was doing, but I'm not good at any of those things. But I'm just like, maybe this and then maybe that. There's no right answer. The place where there's no right answer is powerful because I'm the type of person who's always looking for the right answer.
Yes.
Because, I did well in school and I always wanted the teacher to say, good job, Adam, and all of this stuff. And that's exhausting.
And that's how we're raised, like society.
There is a right answer, right?
Yeah. And so then we have all these people who are working these awesome corporate jobs and they're checking all the right boxes, the right answers, but they feel empty inside. They feel unfulfilled. And so that's where I'm like, let's look at what's under the surface, because there's a person underneath the people pleaser or whatever, like how we're trained to just, like you said, like say the right answer, do the right thing, and you'll be successful. There's a real person underneath that has maybe a totally different desire. And I think, like you're talking about, when you're in the flow of creating, doing art or something, that's where the mind can relax and you can find those answers. You can find out what you're craving. Yeah. I think it's just giving ourselves the space to step into that, to let it unfold. And if, especially talking about running a business, there's no right answer in business. There's not. It is just as I've shared, it's a journey. It's unraveling. It's a walk to walk.
Yeah. But the mindset of there should be a right answer doesn't leave you when you start business. So I intuitively know there isn't a right answer, but as I'm like building this, I find myself wanting to have it correct and to do it the right way, and I procrastinate a lot because I want it to be perfect, even though I wouldn't say that I'm trying to make it perfect. Like,
Yeah.
how do you help people work through like perfectionism, and how do you help people trust themselves?
And that's a journey. I don't have a quick fix. I have some quick activities.
Yes, I imagine it's a lifelong journey.
It is a lifelong journey, yes. But that's where some of the offerings I have doing intuitive movement, yoga, journaling is totally mystical, allowing you to open yourself up to something high. A lot of times my clients just jump on my page when you ask me that question. Allowing the instinct to come to the forefront is the key. I will say I just finished, pretty excited about this. I just created a free guide. So I'll share it with your audience. You guys will be the first to try it out. It's a 5-minute mindfulness activity. All you need is a sticky note and a Sharpie or a pen. And I don't want to give too much away, but literally scribbling. That's one of my biggest go-to tips. Scribble and let it be messy. Let it be what it is. It doesn't have to be something that you can recognize with your logic brain. It can be a scribble, and just notice how that feels. Even I've had people cry because I told them to close their eyes and scribble with a Sharpie, because it is an act of releasing control. It is an act of trusting. It is an act of letting it be imperfect. I think there's a lot to that, what you're asking. Almost all of us struggle with perfectionism, overthinking, fear of judgment of others. And I think it's because of the structures we have in our Western society. If you think about how you went through K through 12, there are rules, and it's this or that. That's it. I think it takes time to unwind from that path, rediscover your intuitive knowing and your yes-no muscles within yourself, not just from an external source. Go scribble.
Do some scribbling. I like it. Yeah. Honestly, I find it very difficult to release all of that. Like, even knowing,
It is.
like in my head, that this is not helpful. Like trying to do it perfectly and right and all these things and just waiting for it to be perfect. It's not helpful. But releasing that, I think, is really challenging. So yeah, scribbling, that's a great one, a great idea.
Mhm.
And journaling, I think just like sitting down and just putting pen to paper and just
Yep.
letting it flow. I imagine you're familiar with the artist's way.
Yes, very much.
You seem like someone who would be familiar with the artist's
Yep.
way.
Yep.
Yeah. And for those listening, it's a book that basically helps you reconnect with your creative child within, I think.
Yep.
But there's two kind of main practices it suggests. And the first is morning pages, which is basically sitting down and just letting stream of consciousness, pen to paper, whatever comes up, just put it down on paper each morning. And then there's the second, which is artist dates, which is basically just like taking yourself out on a date to do something creative. Like I did a few where I like walked around town, or I went in the woods by myself, and I only made it a few weeks in. I got to get back to it. But
I know.
it was wonderful when I did it. I think my pages, actually, I was using this very book right here. But yeah, I have my morning pages right here. The book was too big. I need a smaller book because it would take me like 45 minutes. And I have now, I had one kid at the time. Now I have two kids. So it's a little bit challenging to carve out 45 minutes to write.
I was going to say, though, those two exercises will change your life. Just getting up and writing every morning. And Julia Cameron is the author, by the way, for anyone interested. But yeah, it's stream of consciousness. Don't edit yourself. Don't worry about your handwriting, your spelling. Just let whatever needs to come out. You will find nuggets in there, especially the longer you do it. I've done it for years. I'm very big proponent of it.
Yeah.
But I was also going to say, I'm a Julia Cameron nerd. I have read not quite all of her books. I've got a list. I'm trying to read every single one of her books. She has a lot. But after The Artist's Way, she came out with a sequel. It's called Walking in This World. And basically, she introduces a third exercise.
Oh, yeah?
And I stand by this, and I teach this, and I do this daily. And is walking alone, not with a dog, not with a friend, just walking for at least 20 minutes several times a week. I really recommend people give that a try too, because on those walks, you clear your mind. Don't listen to a podcast, not on the phone, just being present. That's where I get more intuitive downloads, ideas, just pings. Those sudden hits of inspiration that lead us down our path to purpose, like we're talking about. It doesn't come from the logic brain. You can't force it. It's allowing. So I always say that our brain is like a catcher's mitt. So if you think of like a baseball mitt that's closed. So when you're in your logic brain, the fist is closed. It knows what it wants. It's determined. It's got its plans. But we can't accept a ball, right? If God, the universe, is trying to throw you an idea or trying to throw you a nugget towards your purpose, you can't accept it. So to open that mitt, to open your brain, your receptiveness, you have to relax. And so part of that is getting into the body. Yoga, dance, walking, any of that. But also just giving space. We fill so much of our time up with the phone. I'm just like, social media, podcasts, and all those things are great. And not to mention all the people in our lives. But again, there's no space for inspiration to come through. So that's what the walking 20 minutes will do. That's what making time to just stream of consciousness journaling will do. Artist date, same thing. When you're in a new place, somewhere that's exciting to you, even if she recommends, I think, an hour. I've done it 20 minutes. I went into a random bookstore and I come out with so much inspiration ideas. Because when you're in a new place, you're in that heightened level of awareness and mindfulness. And once again, your catcher's mitt is open. You're able to receive downloads from whatever you want to call it. God, universe, I say the creative cloud in the sky, but that's where things come from, right? It's this relaxed moment in the shower. If you look at, you can study creativity and intuition with Albert Einstein. Richard Branson credits a lot of his success to intuition. So does Oprah. And a lot of times they'll share like their biggest ideas came on a walk, in the shower, in the middle of the night. Why? Because they were relaxed. Their catcher's mitt was open.
I love that. No, it's fantastic. I've had that experience. I'm sure that whoever's listening to this has had that experience at least a few times in their life. I wrote a post the other day on LinkedIn about an insight that I had the night before, which is basically me finding myself. I'm trying to turn the podcast into a business that I can grow into as I approach and move beyond financial independence. And when working becomes optional, when I leave Google full time and do this, right? So the idea is I'm trying to make this happen, but I realized I'm rushing, right? There's this feeling like I'm not far enough along. I didn't do enough. I'm not making enough progress. And there's a rushing and a forcing feeling to it. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I rushing? Theoretically, I'm doing this so that I can do it for the foreseeable future, for my quote unquote retirement plan. Why am I trying to rush it? Doesn't make any sense. I know this. I've had experiences where the more I force, the more I rush, the worse I feel and the worse things go. The more I relax and the more I allow, the better things go, the more fun I have, the happier I am. I put that out there the other day on LinkedIn and people are like, oh my God, I really needed to see this. I'm feeling this too. It's like most of my posts don't get that kind of response, but it was like, okay, so it's not just me. And, it goes along with what you're saying. Like the more we can relax and be open, I love the catcher's mitt metaphor. The more that we can allow things to happen and create space, the better things are going to go. And I mean, you said something and I realized that these practices are not so much what you're doing, although that's helpful. It's just carving out the space. You're talking about walking, like, where are you going? You're just doing it for 20 minutes so that you have that space carved out to allow and to be open to and receptive to whatever is there for you to learn.
Exactly. And even I used to walk around the yard, I would call it. I worked at an electric co-op, my last PR job. So it was like a yard with, I don't know, lumber and technical things anyway, I would just go out in the middle of the day. Yeah. Great word. Equipment. What I'm saying is it wasn't beautiful. There wasn't a sidewalk. But I would just go out and walk the perimeter of the yard for 20 minutes. And as simple as that. And I think we just make things more complicated than they should. So just maybe asking yourself, where do I relax? What does bring me that joy? How can I fit in not a whole weekend of it? That would be great. But we say, oh, I'm going to do a whole day of self-care. And then you don't do anything because that's too lofty. So do 5 minutes, do 15 minutes. Like I said, take 5 minutes at your desk, take a few deep breaths, scribble, and then see if you see anything in your scribble. Maybe you see, like, looking at the clouds. Maybe you see an elephant. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just color it. But even that right there, you're offline, you're present, and you're just doing something just because. We've lost that in our society, and that is really and truly scary, because that's where innovation comes from. That's where creativity, just alignment and fulfillment. We have to make it a priority to find small pockets of the day where we can just be, relax, have your mitt open, and let things happen.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I agree. It needs to be a practice, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't need to be overcomplicated.
No.
And so I imagine that you come across quite a few people as they're starting their business that overcomplicate things.
We all do.
How do you help people who do that? Asking for a friend.
It's tricky without knowing your friend's specific basis, but I would say, this is my theory, 9 times out of 10, most of my clients that are in that situation, they have doused themselves in Gary Vee, for example, to start my podcast, that I need to invest $500 a month and I need to do this, which is all fine and well. But typically what I experience is the people who are giving the advice, they are way further along in their journey than a brand new beginner. So half the stuff they're telling you to do, you really don't need. And you probably don't have the capital to sustain anyway. So what it really comes down to, though, is we use those, oh, I need to invest in this software before I can begin, and it's $50 a month or whatever. Before you can do that, it's like you're using that as an excuse to just get started, because that's where the actual growth comes from. That's where the actual fear is. So I always tell people, forget all that. Just do it. Just do the first step. Record your first episode. Record it on your iPhone. That's what I did. Record it on your iPhone. Forget about the fancy mics. Forget about all that. And this is just an example. Just start. Because and the same with business. Okay, you think you need a bookkeeper, an accountant, and all this. Just start. My client called right before this interview. She wanted to get into coaching. She's already doing it, but she's not certified, so she wasn't sure she could actually charge for it. I was like, I want you to call up a friend right now and ask if you can coach them. You have 9 years of experience. You know what you're doing. But we tell ourselves these stories that we need XYZ before we can do what we want to do. And most of the time you don't. You just need someone giving you permission and saying, you're fine, just go for it. And a helpful tool, this may be helpful for some of our listeners, that I constantly go back to. Ask yourself, what is the absolute worst case scenario? What is the absolute worst thing that can happen? So you launch your coaching business, and what, you have no clients? Great. You're right where you are now.
You already don't have any clients.
There's nothing, There's really no risk. It's just our minds tricking us into thinking, oh, but you don't have the perfect website. Your funnels aren't all set up. That is a lifelong process. I've been consistently tweaking my website and funnels and emails for 5 years, and probably will continue for the duration of my business. So it's so tempting to say, oh, I can't launch my newsletter because I haven't found the perfect font yet or whatever. And it's no, just do it. No one cares. People don't care a tenth as much as you think they do. They care about what you're doing, but I guarantee you they're not, oh, I really wish that they wouldn't have chosen that font for their newsletter. Now I'm going to unsubscribe. People are just excited to see you doing something. If that's where your heart is, go for it. And the people who aren't excited for you are going to fall away because they're not meant to be in your life anyway. So,
Yeah.
couple of
Yeah.
thoughts there.
There's a lot there. And I think you're right. It's just do it. Take one step forward and then another step and then another step. But I get caught in this all the time. Certainly at
It's
work
common.
and in my side hustle. I spent all this time getting into posting on LinkedIn, and I took a course on like growing an audience on LinkedIn and stuff. And it was great. I was looking at Kajabi and all these other things. And it's, you don't need any of that. You don't have
Right.
an offering. You don't need to be spending $50 or $100 a month on anything.
And you'll be doing it before you realize.
Doing what?
Spending all this money per month.
Oh, yeah.
Because someone
Before
told
you
you
have
to.
anything, before you have anything to show for it. Like there are all these things out there, all these great tools. And you could spend, I mean, I spent probably 20, 30 hours just like looking at them. And it's fun to do it. But to your point, it's just procrastination. It's just avoiding taking the action because it's scary.
Yeah.
And even an example from last week, I wanted to write my email list. I have like 700, 800 people on my email list, which is fantastic.
That's great.
And do I send them emails? Not really. I send them one email a week when the podcast goes live. But that's because I'm making it into such a bigger thing. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be really well thought out. And it's like I was talking to someone in this mastermind that I'm in, and he's like an email copywriter. And he's like, sometimes they just want to hear from you. Yeah. They just want to hear what you're up to. I went to a bachelor party on Memorial Day weekend, and we went to a music festival, and I spent twice as much to go in the VIP section, not because I necessarily wanted to, but because my friends were. And it was amazing. It was such a good experience. And so like that would be a good email. And I know that. And
totally
I thought about it. And did I do it yet? Nope. To your point, just do it. All the success in quotes that I've had is just haphazard action taking.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of times it feels like I need a plan. I need to like actually plan this out. And then I think that for a while and I procrastinate because I haven't made the plan. All the while, when I get back to just taking action little by little, moving forward, step by step, that's when things happen. Right?
Yes.
You can have a plan. I'm not telling you not to have a plan. You can think all you want, but until you start moving forward, you're not just thinking. There's nothing
just
real
ideas.
about it. And you find out the real stuff when you actually talk to people and move forward and put things out there.
Yeah. Have you read the book Atomic Habits?
I have. It's another good one.
Great. And you know how he talks about don't try to be 50% better or 70% better from today to tomorrow. Just do 1%. 1% today, 1% tomorrow, which is that could be maybe you open a Word document and type Memorial Day weekend email. And that's it. That's your 1% for the day. But he talks about 1% consistently over 365 days is 365% growth. And that's a huge jump. But I think it's like you said, it's breaking it down into these simple action steps. Just do the first thing. And a lot of times that momentum will take over and you'll carry it over. Like if you open a Word document, you're probably going to end up writing some. But I also wanted to add too, that these practices of going for your daily walk, doing the stream of conscious journaling, scribbling, moving intuitively, all these things, they also help you practice letting things be messy, letting things be imperfect, letting there not be a right answer. I really loved how you put that. Yeah.
That's a good point, right? What you teach and what letting it be messy, because it's going to be messy. When you expect it to not be messy, that's going to be upsetting. But if you practice letting things be messy through art or scribbling or moving just like letting there not be a right answer, then you're building that muscle for being open and letting things be messy. I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thinking about how I do that. I just need to do it. I need to make up a whole story about how I'm going to do this.
And then you can hang out with me and I'll teach you some abstract art and we'll really get messy.
Nice. So let's shift gears and talk a little bit more about the corporate wellness events that have become a big part of your business. You said that you just started by just like putting up flyers and putting yourself out there. This is one of those things that I've made into a bigger thing than it needs to be. Like, I want to lead envisioning workshops for teams.
Okay.
How would you advise me on going forward and like actually making that a reality? And tell me a little bit about how you went about making it happen.
Again, don't make it overcomplicated. That would be my biggest piece of advice. It can be as simple as maybe you write a 1-page Word document that says, I'm going to offer this. Here's what we'll do. Here's my contact info. It can be black and white, no imagery, nothing. It can be that simple. But the whole thing is you have to tell people what you want. You have to put yourself out there. That's a scary part, right?
Haley. You have to tell people or they won't know?
Or they won't know.
Oh my goodness. That's
it's
crazy.
That action. It's like that action stuff. And so print 10 of them and make it, okay, this week I'm going to hand out 10 of these documents. I don't care if you give them to your grandma, she'll know someone. If you give them to your coworkers, your friends, your wife can have one, whoever. But make it a point to hand out all 10 give yourself a 24-hour period or something. And just do it. And just the mere fact of taking that action step, then I'll tell you what happens. All of a sudden your brain goes, oh, no one laughed at me and told me I had to leave the village forever. I'm going to die alone. That didn't happen. Oh, so maybe a week goes by and you're like, maybe I'll actually call and follow up with some of these people because it wasn't as scary as I thought. So then you're making a follow-up call. Hey, did you think of anyone who might be interested in this? Guarantee you the fortune's in the follow-up. Somebody will have something, right? Yes. And that's the other thing. A lot of us go, oh, I passed out 10 flyers and that was hard. No one said no one ever gave me anything. I didn't make any money. And it's follow up. People are busy. It doesn't mean they weren't thinking about you. It doesn't mean they didn't have ideas for you or want to hire you. I've had people, oh yeah, we wanted to hire you. Thanks for reaching back out. I would have missed that if I wouldn't have reached back out. It's just making it simple, taking the action step, but just telling people that's what you're doing. It's the biggest thing.
Yeah. It's so simple. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
It's simple go ahead.
I'm just thinking, I'm reliving like things in my life where I like actually did this. So I had one workshop that I've done outside of Google so far. And I just emailed them and was like, I didn't even know what I was going to be asking them. I just it's a camp called Camp Woodward. It's like an extreme sports camp in Pennsylvania. And I wanted to go back there and I became an adult rollerblader during the pandemic and I wanted to go back because I had been there when I was a teenager. I'm like, how can I go back? And I just emailed office@woodward.com and basically was like, hey, I teach these things. I teach mindfulness at Google. I'd love to learn about what you're doing with this wellness position that you have posted. And then I followed up. And if I didn't follow up, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And then the biggest opportunity I've had on the podcast, which is when I was a guest on Choose FI, kind of one of the biggest personal finance podcasts, I followed up. I sent an email a year before and never heard anything. When he said, my co-host is leaving the podcast, I want to feature people from the audience, I emailed him and then I followed up. And he's, oh, thanks so much for following up. People are not offended by following. They appreciate it because they're busy. Yeah. It's funny that you're saying this because these biggest opportunities for me were a result of the follow-up and just putting it out there.
And I think it's getting over this fear of whatever it is, perfectionism, which I've got a quiz for your listeners too that helps identify what your biggest, I call it the authenticity ailments. Your biggest authenticity ailment is. So overthinking, perfectionism, rejection. Oh, and comparison. That's the last one.
Got it.
So those are the ones that I say. But getting over those fears, whatever they are, because that's what's ultimately keeping you from following up. It's not you're lazy. That's what I really don't enjoy seeing out there in the entrepreneurial world is we have these people, you're just not successful because you're lazy and you just got to want it more. And I'm like, I fully disagree with that because, like we've been saying, there's so much more under the surface. Maybe you were rejected in 5th grade when you handed out a paper to your friends or something. And that's maybe not consciously, but that is keeping you from doing this. So let's look at that. Let's unplug that. And there again, journaling. Ask yourself, what is keeping me from telling people that I'm doing these visioning workshops? Why aren't I doing that? And let yourself go there. What are you really afraid of? Asking those harder questions, or get a coach. That's what coaches do. What's actually keeping you from that? And see what comes up. Because it's usually not, I'm fat and lazy or what terrible things that we tell ourselves. Yeah. It's usually much deeper than that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's self-awareness is really like the most important thing in all of this, right? Like you have to be kind and curious.
Yes.
With yourself, right?
Yes.
Because there's all these things that we have going on in our minds and our bodies that we just aren't aware of. And if we're not willing to create the space, like we've talked about before, to listen and ask ourselves through journaling, through meditation, through coaching, therapy, to have these spaces where we can really get to know ourselves, then we're just going to keep doing the same thing we've been doing.
Yeah.
And not getting the results that we want in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Haley, you mentioned that you have like a quiz for people.
Yes.
Where can they find that quiz?
So if you go to the sparklinghippie.com/quiz, you can find it there, but it's also on my homepage on the sparklinghippie.com. Yeah, it's a very simple 2-minute quiz and just ask a few questions that you guys would probably enjoy, your listeners. How do you procrastinate and where does it come up? And then it shares with you the top 4 ailments that I see in people. And I've been studying this for longer than I've been in business, but I see these same things recurring in people with what's actually keeping them from achieving the success that they want. And it comes down to those 4 things. Once you know which one is your biggest, we all have all of them, but which one's your strongest, then you can start to peel away the layers. Say it's rejection. Where does that come from? Were you raised in a house where you felt rejected? Are you in a relationship where you feel rejected? There's a whole lot of layers to uncover there.
Tell me, barn dominium.
So the word is a cross between a barn and a condominium.
Right.
Barn dominium. But basically, it's the structure of a modern barn, steel frame with 10 sides. But people make gorgeous, elaborate houses out of them. And it's much cheaper than traditional build and more environmentally friendly, too.
Why is that?
Just the cost of things keeps the energy usage low. A lot of times it's like farmers, so they have half of it is a shop or a place to park trucks and stuff, and the other half is a house. So it cuts down on all of that. And I have a tractor next door.
I love the barn dominium. Your parents have a farm?
Yeah, I'm actually 5th generation.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep.
So then you just build it on the property and have your space?
Pretty much. I lived at the farm years ago in a family farmhouse. It's 100 years old. My uncle ended up getting that when my grandpa died. I still want to live there. And I was like, oh, I can't live there because there's just nothing there. There's no houses. And my mom was like, go up the road and build you one.
How big is this farm? It's big?
We have about 3,000 acres. Okay. So yeah.
Big. Pretty big.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the farm scheme of things, but 3,000 acres. I have 1.2.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you could find a spot for a house on there.
There's a perfect spot already. Years ago, this guy had a trailer house out there and he did immaculate landscaping. So trees, there was a deck going out to the pond. Since then, the trailer's been bulldozed and buried, but you still have this gorgeous pond with trees all around it. And I'm just like, it's begging for me to put a house there. It just
There you go. There you go. That's awesome. We have this local farm. It's called Oak Hill Farms. So a woman wrote a cookbook and Instagram. She's an influencer basically. And she made this little cute farm. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's a modern barn. And inside they have just like a little shop of like homemade things she makes and sells. And then they have animals in the back. It's probably 5 acres. It's like very small. It's pretty cool. And I asked her and I was like, how did you do it? Did you work with someone? Because I still want to do it. I now want to build a skate park / yoga, meditation,
Oh,
podcast, office, all in the same thing.
yeah.
And I want the roof to be like this with the windows, but you could do that on like a steel frame
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you need to look into barndominiums.
Barnum, I will be for
It's
sure.
perfect for that. Because that's
Yeah.
my phase too, is I do art yoga. I want to do art yoga
Right.
retreat center. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we're on
Part
the
of me
same
wants,
wavelength.
yeah, we are. When I heard you speaking at Google, I'm like, I need to talk to her.
Yeah.
We're on the same wavelength. I don't remember exactly what you were presenting on, designing your year, I think. I was like, your vibe, we got to talk. It's going to be
Oh,
great. So now you're going to like host retreats. Is that the part of
yeah.
it or just be your home?
My idea is to have a house and then like across the street have a retreat center, because I didn't realize you were from a Google workshop. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those types of workshops, it would be nice to Google, for instance. Oh, by the way, if you want to host a team building retreat in person, come to my farm in the middle of nowhere where you can totally relax, focus, unwind.
Yeah. We have a very similar vision. I like it.
Cool.
I want to do the same thing. I call the
Yeah.
skate park casita.
I love that.
It's casita little house.
Yeah.
The scale of this casita has now ballooned to 1,500 square feet at least. So it's more of a house. And my wife is like, not on our property. You got to find somewhere else for that, because I don't want
Yeah.
randos from the internet showing up at my house.
Well,
which I get it.
Understandable. But probably you'll know them in some capacity. I mean,
Exactly.
if they're willing to spend the money and come retreat with you, they're probably not too weird.
Right.
Probably.
I would think. I
And-
would think there's a bit
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
And where are you based?
I'm in New Jersey. So
Oh,
right
okay.
outside
Okay.
of New York. Yeah.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah. So that would be a great place for a retreat center.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's just a matter of the land. It's probably a little bit more
Yeah.
expensive than Oklahoma,
I'm sure. I'm sure.
just a little bit,
Yeah.
but we'll figure it out. We got a lot of farms nearby, just like horse farms and things like that.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Oh, I bet you find some. That's exciting. You'll have to keep me updated on that.
I will. Tell me, barn dominium.
So the word is a cross between a barn and a condominium.
Right.
Barn-dominium. But basically, it's the structure of a modern barn, steel frame
Right.
with
Mhm.
10 sides. But people make gorgeous, elaborate houses out of them. And it's much cheaper than traditional build and more environmentally friendly, too.
Why is
So,
that?
Just the cost of things keeps the energy usage low. A lot of times it's like farmers, so they have half of it is a shop or a place to park trucks and stuff, and the other half is a house. So it cuts down on all of that. And I have a tractor next door.
I love the barn dominium. Your parents have a farm?
Yeah, I'm actually 5th generation.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep.
So then you just build it on the property and have your space?
Pretty much. I
Nice.
lived at the farm years ago in a family farmhouse. It's 100 years old. My uncle ended up getting that when my grandpa died. I still want to live there. And I was like, oh, I can't live there because there's just nothing there. There's no houses. And my mom was like, go up the road and build you one.
How big is this farm? It's big?
We have about 3,000 acres.
Okay.
So yeah.
Pretty big.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the farm scheme of things, but 3,000 acres. I have 1.2.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can find your spot for a house on there.
There's a perfect spot already. Years ago, this guy had a trailer house out there and he did immaculate landscaping. So trees, there was a deck going out to the pond. Since then, the trailer's been bulldozed and buried, but you still have this gorgeous pond with trees all around it. And I'm just like, it's begging for me to put a house there. It just
There you
is.
go. There you go. That's awesome. We have this local farm. It's like this. It's called Oak Hill Farms. So a woman wrote a cookbook and Instagram. She's an influencer basically, and she made this little cute farm. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's a modern barn, and inside they have just like a little shop of like homemade things she makes and sells. And then they have animals in the back. It's probably 5 acres. It's like very small. It's pretty cool. And I like asked her, and I was like, how did you do it? Did you work with someone? Because I still want to do it. I now want to build a skate park / yoga, meditation, podcast, office, all in the same thing.
Yeah.
And I want the roof to be like this with the windows, but you could do that on like a steel frame structure.
Yeah. I was going to say, you need to look into barndominiums.
Barn to I will be for
It's
sure.
perfect for that because that's
Yeah.
my phase too, is I do art yoga. I want to do art yoga
Right.
retreat center. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we're on
Part
the
of me
same
wants,
wavelength.
yeah, we are. When I heard you speaking at Google, I'm like, I need to talk to her.
Yeah.
We're on the same wavelength. I don't remember exactly what you were presenting on, designing your year, I think. I was like, your vibe, we got to talk. It's going to be
Oh,
great. So now you're going to like host retreats. Is that the part of
yeah.
it or just be your home?
My idea is to have a house and then like across the street have a retreat center because I didn't realize you were from a Google workshop. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those types of workshops, it would be nice to Google, for instance. Oh, by the way, if you want to host a team building retreat in person, come to my farm in the middle of nowhere where you can totally relax, focus, unwind.
Yeah. We have a very similar vision. I like it.
Cool.
I want to do the same thing. I call the
Yeah.
skate park casita.
I love that.
It's casita little house.
Yeah.
The scale of this casita has now ballooned to 1,500 square feet at least. So it's more of a house. And my wife is like, not on our property. You got to find somewhere else for that because I don't want
Yeah.
randos from the internet showing up at my house.
Well,
which I get it.
Understandable. But probably you'll know them in some capacity. I mean,
Exactly.
if they're willing to spend the money and come retreat with you, they're probably not too weird.
Right.
Probably.
I would think. I
And-
would think there's a
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
And where are you based?
I'm in New Jersey. So
Oh,
right
okay.
outside
Okay.
of New York. Yeah.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah. So that would be a great place for a retreat center.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's just a matter of the land. It's probably a little bit more
Yeah.
expensive than Oklahoma,
I'm sure. I'm sure.
just a little bit,
Yeah.
but we'll figure it out. We got a lot of farms nearby, just like horse farms and things like that.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Oh, I bet you find some. That's exciting. You'll have to keep me updated on that.
I will. So when we were talking about putting yourself out there for the corporate workshops, you mentioned and just like documenting, hey, here's an outline of what we might do. Here's maybe some of what are the outcomes or the benefits. And then just sending that around saying, do you know anyone that might be interested in this? Is it really that simple?
Okay. I'll be very honest with you. Gut level honesty. So that's how I started. Yes. I walked around downtown, handed them out, called people, followed up, and I did a lot in Sonora, which was awesome. And then online as well. I did the same thing. Okay, now fast forward a year later, and I'm like, I really want to do more of these corporate online. I love this. I went out and hired a marketing coach. Okay, a very awesome, well-known marketing coach. She's amazing, top tier, I would say. Do you know what this marketing coach told me to do?
The same thing you already did?
The same thing. The same thing. She goes, make you a little spreadsheet of a list of the companies you want to contact, pitch them, follow up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it can't be that simple. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm kind of scared. No, like that's literally. And so it's on my to-do list right now because several months have gone by and I have not done it. And I'm like, are you sure there's not another way? Are you sure there's not like a hack? Or she's like, you gotta do what you gotta do. Like, go do it. And I'm like, all right. Yeah.
So you're going to do it.
Well, yeah, what I need to do, truthfully, is journal. Why am I not doing this? It's coming up for you. Why are you stalling? Because I don't really have an answer on the top of my head. I don't know why I wouldn't, because I set this goal. I've got my sticky notes with my goals everywhere. I visualize
You've done it before.
I'm doing it already.
Right,
Yeah. So I'm like, so what is holding me back? So I need to take my own medicine and dive into that.
Yeah. And is there, when you do it, is it just like anyone you have connections with at the company? Are you like trying to get to the right person?
Yeah.
That's for me. I think, there's got to be like a right person and this and that.
I think it's a little bit of both. Like one company, I had a direct connection, like a very tight contact that I knocked on that door, nothing. And then a year later, the same company, someone who did not know me, did not know that connection, came and had found me online and asked me to work for them. So there's times like that where you're like, okay, that's just the universe or whatever. But
right.
I've tried both. If you have a connection, I say absolutely use it.
Try that, yeah.
Yep, try it. But then I think that's my hesitation, because more what I'm trying now is actually going and looking for, okay, who does the HR or who does wellness? It's different company to company. And then pitching them cold, which is definitely harder than having a contact, but how else are they going to know about you?
If you don't tell them. Yeah. Got it. So, Haley, let's jump into the Mindful Fire Final Four. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. So the first question is about envisioning. Envisioning is all about using the power of your mind to think big and to create the future that you want, using your predictive brain and taking action and actually telling people what you want. Just tell me about a time in your life where you wanted to make something happen and maybe you didn't know how it was going to come to be, but you made it happen because you followed your intuition and your vision.
My first PR job, about a year in, there was an entrepreneur calling there that I needed to follow. I wasn't sure how. I remember very clearly, I was walking down. I loved the job, but I knew I didn't want to be there forever. I knew that I had to somehow leap into this business thing, whatever that looked like. And I remember one day very clearly, I was walking by myself. I did not plan that. I just realized that. Walking down a dirt road by myself. And I walked past a cemetery, a really old, beautiful cemetery. And I remember I was like 22 years old. And I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, life is going to pass me by before I know it. It just goes so quick. I need to do something. Like, I don't know. I just need to do something. And my solution was, I said, I want to move somewhere beautiful. I'm going to save. I'm going to start a savings account, just start putting money in there, and I'll make a goal within a year to move. Which, looking back, I'm like, oh, I'm so young. So I started stashing money for whatever, just a random thing. And kid you not, a few months go by, I've got a decent amount saved. And a friend of mine came in my office and said, I'm moving to Australia. Can I borrow your laptop? And I said, I'm going too. Where do I sign up? And it was as simple as that. And I look back and like, that was really weird, but it was an intuitive hit. I knew I wanted to go somewhere beautiful. I didn't know where or how or whatever. I just started following that intuition, right? By putting the money away. And time went on and I spent a year traveling the whole country. I had a beautiful experience, a wonderful time. It's something I'm most proud of in my 20s. Sometimes it's just those fuzzy little pictures start coming in and you got to just start taking action and just trusting that it'll unfold.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had so many times in my life like that where I was mentioning leading the workshop at that camp. Like I have no idea how this is going to happen. I just wanted to go back there. I wanted to, maybe I could teach mindfulness there. And then
so cool.
I happened to look at their website, which I did every once in a while. And I happened on the job page, which I had never been to before. And I saw they were hiring for a wellness instructor. Summer camps don't really hire wellness instructors.
Right.
And then I just sent the email and then I followed up. And now I'm like friends with the director of health and wellness. And I led this workshop and we're friends. You never know. But if you don't create space to think and dream and envision what you want, you're just going to keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. I love that story. And yeah, you're going to have that memory of Australia, that year in Australia for the rest of your life. Yeah. And that is worth more than any amount of money that you could have earned in that PR job for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. So the second question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone early on their path to financial independence?
Good question. I've studied financial independence again since I was 18 because I knew something was, again, those fuzzy pictures. And I think that there's a lot of different ways to obtain it, right? So it's more, again, I'm going to have to bring it back to purpose. I would say figure out how you want to be financially independent. Is it passive income? Is it what I do is very active, but I love it and I want to do it. Maybe it's owning properties, but do you have a passion for owning properties or are you just doing that because someone said it'll make you money, right? Mm-hmm. I think you have to really be aligned with the method that you choose. So yeah, and I also would encourage you to ask yourself, how do you want to spend your time? And these two questions go hand in hand. What is your ideal day? What is your ideal way to spend your life? When I ask myself that again and again over the years, it always comes back to, oh, I want to teach and I want to paint and I want to write. And you know what I mean? So I built a career doing that. Maybe you don't want to do any of that. Maybe if it's not, I want to speak on a podcast all day, then maybe there's a different route or whatever. So having your listeners really think about what is that ultimate vision of fulfillment, not just, I want a nice car and a nice house. Forget about the money. What would a fulfilling life look like for you? And then maybe plan accordingly for that, to find that financial freedom through that avenue.
Yeah. So really tune into what you feel your purpose is or might be and what you can experiment with to start to get clearer on that so that you can design your life and then work back from there to start taking the steps to put the financial pieces in place to make it
well
possible.
Said. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Very cool. Third question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone getting started with meditation and or mindfulness?
Be grace giving with yourself. Give yourself grace. You don't need to be able to sit still for an hour on your first day. You don't need an hour of mindful drawing every day right off the bat. You know what I mean? Start again with the small pockets of time that you have and let that be enough. Let yourself be grateful that you spent 5 minutes or 2 minutes. Sometimes I'm doing shavasana, just corpse pose in yoga, and I can only sit 2 minutes. But let that be, hey, I'm proud of you, self. We sat 2 minutes stillness, or we did 2 minutes of mindfulness. Let that be awesome, because I guarantee you 2 minutes will change your whole day. 5 minutes will change your whole day. Letting just whatever you can do or whatever you do, just be grateful to yourself for doing it. And again, gracious. Give yourself all that self-love.
Well said. You said something there that's one of my favorite phrases. Let it be enough.
Yes. Yeah.
So powerful. That in itself can change your life. If you
Absolutely.
let whatever is be enough as it is, can change your whole experience of life. It's an ongoing practice. You saying it is reminding me of it. So I love that. And then the final question, Haley, is how can people connect with you online, learn more of what you're up to, learn about your offerings and the resources you mentioned today? Where can people connect with you online?
Absolutely. I would love to connect with all of you. If you reach out, please let me know that you've heard me on Adam's podcast so I can share that success with him. I always think it's fun to know how people find us. But I am on everywhere at the Sparkling Hippie. I'm most active probably on Instagram, but I also have a Facebook group, and website is thesparklinghippie.com. And you can find all of my offerings and the free stuff that we mentioned today. You can find those there. And I'd be really interested to hear what does come up for you guys if you try the 5-minute mindfulness activity, or if you take the free quiz, or both. I would be very interested to hear how you evolve as a result of this podcast and those free tools. Would love to connect with whoever and wherever.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Haley, for being here and joining me and sharing your wisdom with the audience.
Thank you, Adam. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that everyone has a great day.
Yeah. Take care.
Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Mindful Fire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this. This just lets the platforms know you're getting value from the episodes and you want to be here when I release additional content. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.